everybody. Welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder of We Deepen, wedeepen.com. If you go to the website right now, check it out, go to the calendar, and you can see all types of transformational and community-oriented experiences that can help you to have more meaningful, loving relationships. So make sure to check out that calendar. Today, I have a favorite guest, and I say favorite because this is the third time that she is on this podcast, and there has been 13 episodes released this far. Yarixa is here. I am in Miami today. She's in Los Angeles, and she has just returned from a 10-day emotional freedom technique retreat. Experience with Sonya Sophia. So one of the things that, in the last episode, so Yari was in episode number 3 and number 8. I highly recommend going listen to them, especially number 8. Both of them are great, but number 8, you heard me radiate how Yarixa's coaching and her ability to lead a group is on the level of Tony Robbins. And one of the things that I really appreciate of witnessing her in her genius is that she's always learning and growing. And so to participate in this EFT training, she's come back even stronger than before. And it's like she might have grown wings. So Yari, I'm so excited to have you back on the podcast. Thank you.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Christina. I love your introduction. And I love also how you're so used to calling me Yari that you're like Yarixa, right? Like finishing the name, my full name, just because they're like, oh yeah, that's right. She wants to be called Yarixa, which is my full name. And thank you for the effort that I see that you're putting into it, considering that you always call me Yari too.
I always call you Yari, but I like calling you Yarixa. To other people, I say it often. So tell me, I'm not saying it correctly?
No, you are, but I could see like just a little pause after Yarixa. It was like the like it's not Yarixa, right? It's not like the fullness. It's just like, oh yeah, and there's that.
and add the end.
Yeah. But I so appreciate you, Christina, and thank you so much. And I love being on your podcast. I think it's so sincere. It's generous with the information, and we're so open. It just really feels like a conversation, and I love having these types of conversations. And one of my ways of being that I enjoy is full transparency, vulnerability. It's almost like a skill set that I've developed to be vulnerable pretty much at all times. EFT 10-day retreat was one of the most powerful things I've ever done in my entire life's existence in terms of transformative work. And it was held by this woman who is a master at EFT. Her name is Sonya Sophia. She is someone I can really call my teacher. I haven't really been able to connect with other people before as saying, yeah, that's my teacher, even though like people such as, let's say, Marianne Williamson, Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer, Esther and Jerry Hicks, those are all teachers, but I haven't really been able to be like, oh yeah, that's my teacher. And she's been doing EFT for, I think it's been 15 years, and she's #1 presenter at Burning Man. Her workshop is always filled every single time with 300 to 500 people every day at Burning Man. And she caters to an audience that, she comes in these big ballroom dresses and with flowers in her hair, and she steps out like a queen and very confident in that way, which kind of really draws a certain kind of attention. And then when she talks, you're like, oh, wow, this woman is beyond whatever my perception has been around this big ballroom dress. And she's so fucking cool and so connected and so in integrity and so heart-led that I appreciate that so much. And I resonate with her way of showing up because I do the same with Unleash. I dress up in a way that activates my full avatar, and I feel like she does the same. Like, it just activates you to become more in integrity with who you really are as a being. And EFT has created so much spaciousness in my mind that it has shifted me in a way that feels even more powerful than any and all plant ceremonies that I've ever done combined. And it was coupled in the retreat with dance. Every single morning, we would do ecstatic dancing to move the energy, to allow us to come into a state of presence that actually brings, because your fascia tissue and we're covered in fascia tissue that's our web. And it also is our subconscious mind, which EFT is a lot about tapping into the subconscious mind, which basically operates 95% of how we show up in the world. And 5% or so is conscious mind. So you're consciously creating with only 5%, and 95% is subconscious, meaning the programs that you've ever received, especially between the ages of 1 through 6, because that's when you absorb everything like a sponge as you're in a theta state in your brainwave predominantly. And as you might know, in meditation, we want to achieve those theta brainwaves so that we're able to come into a more state of presence. So that's what's happening in ages 1 through 6. And even in the womb, you're absorbing a lot of the energy from what's happening in your mom, and even you're interconnected with your dad. And that's, there's a lot of metaphysics involved in that, but EFT really just allows you to bring up all the triggers, the wounds, the programs that you've received, the belief systems to bring them to the surface to see if that's actually your truth. Because if you're finding yourself suffering and in pain consistently, and there's a lot of triggers and a lot of conflict within yourself and other people, and even your external world, let's say financially speaking, career-wise, that you're not fulfilled, that you're just sort of operating in this autopilot sort of way, it allows you to tap into what these beliefs are and rewire them in a way that's like creating a new possibility and a new reality and a new truth for yourself. That unless you excavate these things that we often push under the rug, it's like you're not shining light on your shadows, in other words.
So Sonya Sophia, I first was introduced to her through you.
At Unleash.
In person at Unleash, but prior to Unleash, you actually had talked a lot about Sonya Sophia. There was a lot of hype around in your excitement that she was coming to Unleash and she was going to be leading EFT at Unleash. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious for anyone who's listening to this conversation, and if you're meeting Yari for the first time, I want to acknowledge too, Yari, you turn 40 in like 4 days?
Yeah. 4 days.
So you have a career spanning 2 decades, always within the coaching arena. You started in fitness coaching and then have moved through the spectrum into mental coaching, spiritual coaching, and helping to activate people more deeply into their, I don't know if I even want to use the word purpose, but into their own authentic way of being.
Exactly. Their full self-expression, in other words, like activating the humans to be exactly who they are in their truth. That's the liberating experience that Unleash offers.
So now you go into this 10-day course, and partly one of the reasons you're going to it is because how can I improve? How can I add more tools to my toolbox? How can I help others break free even more deeply using other modalities? Now, also, you go through this program and you, somebody who has been, quote unquote, doing the work for decades, has your own breakthroughs. Now, when you went into it, I'm curious, was there something that you felt in your life that was like, this isn't working? Like something that...
Yes.
So you knew, you had like an intention going into it. And then throughout the journey, that ended up shaking, breaking, shifting. What was it that you went in with that you were seeking for your own individual self-growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think I signed up for it because I just know that there's so much to uncover. And, you know, it was actually, it was both. It was, how can I work on myself, right, in order to show up in a way that's even more powerful for people? But intentionally, it was for me. It was actually to give me the self-love that I need in order to show up in an overflow of love for others. And part of the reason that this, was sticking out was right after the last Unleash, Heaven on Earth, I began to realize that because I work with so many people, and it's hundreds of people at one time, so I know thousands and thousands of people, it started to become like anytime I was outside of the container of Unleash, I was finding myself isolating myself more. And because I couldn't receive more people's stories, I couldn't receive more information, and I literally had to isolate myself in order to even be functional. And being in an isolated, I was like, there's something off about this.
I think
there's something off. Yeah.
You went on vacation. You went on vacation by yourself.
And exactly. I was like, I just want to completely go to the other side of the world. I went to the Maldives, literally, to go somewhere that I would find nobody that I knew. I knew that nobody that I knew was going to be there. And so I paid so much money to go travel to the opposite side of the world, to not engage with anyone at all except for the people that were, part of the hotel and in service. And I barely even spoke to them. I literally would go into my room and then just step outside to the beach and come back into my room. And I had to go all the way to the other side of the fucking world. So, and it was good for my nervous system. It actually allowed me to calm down. But how deeply isolating is that now all of a sudden the work that I love people so much, and now I'm finding myself like kind of like how celebrities probably often feel, is that they can't really engage with people because people are going to talk to them about their stuff and want pictures, and and it's always engaging, and like, how much information can you take? And so, but what I did feel, I was like, this can't be right. This can't be the way. I feel alone. I feel like it's hard for me to relate to people at the stage that I'm at, unless you're also an entrepreneur that works with a lot of people and gets me. Like, I felt like, other people can't understand why I'm not able to engage with them. And when I did, it was still very loving and kind, but within myself, I could just feel like there's a protective layer over me. So when I went to this thing, mind you, 10 people out of the 26 people went from Unleash because they found Sonya Sophia. So that's 1/3 of the people that I was with at this retreat. And, understand that that's a high level of vulnerability for the teacher, right? Me as a teacher, to be amongst, quote unquote, my students, to show myself in the deepest of ways in sharing all of my childhood traumas and my belief systems and the stories. And we all got to be students together. And, you know, I allowed myself and gave myself permission for that, because oftentimes when you are a teacher, sometimes you feel like if they know this about me, they're going to use it against me. And you do have there was a moment in time, actually, a mutual friend of ours, Gio, I actually was going to do a session with him, and he had to do a session for me. And I've worked with Gio in terms of I have done EFT before with him, even prior to this, because I've been using EFT for a while as part of my coaching. But in that moment, I said to Sonya, but, I'm paired with somebody who's actually my student, and we've worked on a personal level. I'm just afraid of what I could experience, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I could feel like there's something there for me to experience. There's a part of me that was afraid that, gosh, now he's going to know this stuff about me. And he might use that and tell people about it, or God, who knows how a person can interpret that and have something in their hand that they could use later against me. And that's just a false belief, right? And I could tap on that. And this is what I'm talking about, these beliefs that hold you back from doing things because you have a thought, there was this erroneous thought that by doing a session with this individual who's been my student before would take this and use it against me. So there's a story that I made up that would not allow me to potentially connect with this person, in which could have been really powerful work. And it was. And it was really beautiful. And he held space for me just like a teacher would. And we did great work together. And it was powerful and it was fascinating. And then I broke through that limiting belief. Right? So leading into those fears as well.
I think that's so powerful because oftentimes we take our teachers, and essentially everyone is your teacher and your
Everyone's
student.
your teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. And we take them and we put them on pedestals.
That's right.
And there you are, eye to eye with them, saying, hey, I'm normal. I put on my pants every day, one leg at a time, just like you do. So that is powerful to give the people that are witnessing you on a pedestal at times, to actually for them to see you as a human being. And it's interesting to hear you say how this experience was vulnerable, because I watch you, even as you're on these stages, share some of the most intimate pieces of your existence and your traumas and your triggers over and over again. But that, now that I'm thinking as I'm speaking, that is on a stage. Now I hear maybe the vulnerability comes when it's more intimate. And
more intimate.
One on
sure,
one.
It's like let's say Tony Robbins was with you at a retreat and he's showing himself to everyone there, his shit.
Powerful.
Literally, you're showing your shit to everyone, because you're no different. You're no different than anybody else. But to actually show yourself in that way, I do recognize, wow, that was pretty vulnerable of me. But I think it's because it's a skill I've been developing to even say it on stage and leaning into those fears over and over again, that really allowed me to drop in as if, I'm like everybody else. And there was just that moment in time with Gio in particular that was the most confronting. That was the edge. That was an edge for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I danced naked in front of everybody.
Nothing new.
Nothing new. That's nothing new for me. But again, it's a more intimate space. And also I wasn't holding space. So it's one thing is to be showcasing this is what it looks like. And another thing is to be here I am. This is just me, actually. I'm not presenting. There's no performance aspect. I'm just here to heal. And what I got out of EFT, the most my God, it was so, so powerful to know that when you actually go into those traumas and triggers, and oftentimes people don't want to do it because they have a misconception of like, oh, if you focus on your trauma and if you focus on these negative things about your life, you will then bring more attention to it. Because the law of attraction is something, a messaging that has been in our generation that's been really powerful about focusing on only the positive, focusing on the things that you want, focusing on the gratitude, which is great. And that's part of the equation. And that's really helpful for most people since most people are thinking negative thoughts anyway. However, if you dismiss the actual belief systems and programs that you've been given and not have felt the feelings when something happened to you, that you sort of in survival mode, you create whatever your brain needs to create in order for you to survive the experience and not feel pain or get through it so that you can navigate and allow you to really survive that moment in time. So you don't actually get to when you're a kid specifically, you don't actually get to tell your parent what's actually happening for you. Like, Mom, this really hurts me that you speak to me this way. Or like, Dad, you know, it really hurts me when you're not here for me when we're supposed to go get ice cream and you choose to go on a date instead of being with me. You don't actually get to feel what that felt like. And so when you go into this frees up your subconscious mind, which means that you are accessing these files. It's almost like you're accessing these files, you're bringing them to the conscious awareness, you're feeling them, which in feeling it, you're off-gassing, meaning the energy that is being utilized to hold that file in place, right? Like if you're in your computer and you have all of these files there and you have all this stuff on your on your screen and you keep like putting files and files, eventually it'll be like your computer at some point will be like, hey, you got to like clean up these files because we don't have no more space to put files in. You have no more space for pictures. You can't put more pictures or videos in here because if you did, the system can't hold it. And so we're operating from a nervous system that is like your computer. It is full. It is fucking at capacity. No wonder we have so much anxiety. No wonder we go into states of depression to off gas because we need to release somehow that energy that can't be released until something physically, emotionally has to happen in order for you to even keep yourself at an even keel of surviving. So when you do a 10-day program like this, 6 hours plus of tapping a day, my database is clear. So the amount of energy that I have at the moment is fucking ridiculous. I can receive people. I can have conversations with people. I am totally so good right now in this moment because I cleared so much space in my database that I have so much more to give and so much more to receive. Because it's like, if you're full, you can't receive. Right? Like your computer officially cannot receive any more programs, cannot receive any more information. So this is what, the best way I can relay it is think about it as a computer. Think about it as your phone. And so EFT gives you access to those files so that you can not only see them, but dismantle them and then rewire it with your actual belief systems and your actual truth from a conscious perspective, not from what you were told that is true.
Thank you for doing all the work that you're doing, because when we came into recording this podcast, you asked me, how are you? And I was like, I'm okay. And just being in your presence has lit me up. Like I've just, I think that's why it's so important. The more people who are doing the work and actually, because the world out there right now, it is the end of 2021 and it's chaotic. You turn on the news and the media and it's conflict after conflict, and many of us were raised in conflict. And I have been thinking a lot often of how love, you said you wanted to talk about love this podcast as well. And I have been thinking conflict as a child of being an observer of it, as well as the confusion around love. So for me personally, when I was 18, my father, my parents were separating at this time after years of conflict. And my dad sat me on the steps and told me that he is not in love with my mom anymore. And I remember, like, at the time taking that in as 18, but as, in my 20s, really having a hard time with that. Like, how is this person that gave birth to me, and two of them, how does one not love the other? That was just mind-blowing and so confusing. So when we think about trauma, like, oftentimes I might go back to that moment and think, you might ask me at some point in my life, hey, did you have a traumatic childhood? No, I had a great childhood. It was beautiful and it was fun. And I, was raised in a middle class home, and I, was in a safe neighborhood. But we don't necessarily equate these moments of being out in the world, of even just turning on the news and seeing as that is actually creating trauma inside our system. So I guess first off, I'd love you to go a little bit into, because oftentimes I've met some, and I don't mean to stereotype in any way, but more men I've met who have like, I have no trauma, like nothing. And so I think there's these walls that go up for protection mechanism. What is really the benefit of breaking down and getting behind, and really, and also too, is if you could also speak to a little bit of what is trauma?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, by the way, of like even your story first of like experiencing that shock when your dad shared that with you. Right. And that was a little bit of we can call that a little bit of a traumatic experience. We might, again, you might have not really felt your feelings at that moment. You were just trying to understand, right, with your logical mind, but not drop into your heart, right? Like you didn't like necessarily drop in there and like sob over it or grieve over what that meant at that moment in time. Maybe you did later. Oftentimes we don't do it right then and there because your brain is just trying to comprehend what the fuck is happening. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to move through it and understand your dad and understand your mom and maybe even reflect on how did it all happen. And so there's so much logical. And what is love, right? What does that mean, right? What does love even mean, considering that he's no longer in love with your mom? And like, so your brain, your logical brain wants to just wrap itself around it so that it can assist you in surviving that trauma.
I mean, I literally have made a whole entire career probably based upon that one moment.
Right. And to also understand that, like I said before, ages 1 through 6 is really where the programming happens. And even 0 to 6, meaning when you're in your mother's womb, if your mother was experiencing certain levels of trauma in her life, even with your dad, or whatever has happened to her, and you're being formed inside of her body. And so you're actually energetically receiving this into your system. And this goes into epigenetics, which I don't have, I'm not going to go into all of that study. But essentially it's at a cellular DNA level that you're actually receiving information. Mm-hmm. So let's say you are growing up with both parents, and that love that supposedly you perceived as a child, because you're in a theta state of being, theta brainwave, you are absorbing not just the talk that happens in the family, you know, like the statements that are being said, but you're actually picking up the energy. So from an energetic standpoint, whatever stuff is happening, you as a child are feeling that. And then you formulate concepts, thoughts, beliefs, ideas. Oh, this means that when mom and dad are feeling this way, that means that there is whatever you've made it mean, right? In order for you to survive that experience. Oh, this is what love looks like. Mom and dad fighting because they're still together. Let's just say that that was the thing. They love each other. This is what love looks like. We develop then a familiarity, and all of a sudden you find yourself in relationships that are playing out that wound, that are actually playing out the same trauma that you received when you were a child. So most of your relationships are all about fighting because that's what love means to you. That's what you made it mean. And this is what I'm talking about when we go into understanding the belief systems, the information that you've received, the programming that you've received. Because it's like when we watch television, similar to, like, let's say a child 1 through 6 particularly, we are in a receptive mode, right? Like, you've noticed that when you watch a movie, if it's an emotional movie, you find yourself crying as if it's happening to you, right? Like, or laughing. Or whatever emotion, you almost find yourself as part of the movie. It's reminding you of certain things. So you're in such a receptive mode that it becomes you. Same or similar thing that happens when you are those ages. It's becoming you. You are programming. If you listen to the news 24/7, you're programming because you are in a receptive mode when you make the decision, I'm going to listen to the news. What's happening is you're receiving this information. And if that's predominantly what you watch, you be rest assured that you're going to be in a lot of skepticism, lack mentality, fear, all of that, because that's your programming. If you watch feel-good movies all the time, your programming will tend to be more feel-good in your life. So, okay, let's go back to the question about love and trauma, because I think, like, I kind of veered away from that. So I want to kind of bring it back and reel it in.
Yeah, bring it back to that. And I just also want to acknowledge the power of thinking of that energetic undertone that what children are picking up. So parents, I think that's a new frame for parents to realize that despite your children may not be in a room when conflict is happening, or you may not be telling them what is going on, but they are receiving that frequency of, if there's conflict, if there's, I guess it's usually some type of form of conflict, but they
or joy,
or joy,
or whatever is happening,
they're feeling it.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
yes.
They're feeling it in their system. So any way that you can bring more joy into your children's life. And also it just speaks to how important parenting is. It's so important. It's the most important job ever.
Totally. My gosh, it really is. And, you know, when I was growing up, right, my mom, when I was in her womb, was very angry at my dad, because my dad cheated on her. He did not respect her, in many ways. And, you know, my dad, like, you know, growing up, I understand his sort of crass, like his way of being is very direct, no filter. You know, there's no compassion, or empathy. I believe, based on, you know, what I've looked into narcissism, that he is he's got a narcissistic personality that he's developed. And so he just, it's almost as if so cold-hearted, in the ways that he treated my mom. Not always, because there's, there's sides to people, but oftentimes she would receive that. And he didn't attend my birth, and they were sort of getting a divorce while I was being born. And I just remember him maybe at one time when I was a child, him sleeping over my mom's in her bed, and I was there and just saw how then he left, right? So there's also, I witnessed abandonment. I received the anger that my mom had and the anger that my dad had. So this feistiness that I carry, I feel there's a transmutation that I get to do with it. It's almost like I'm an alchemist in the sense that I'm a pattern interrupt for whatever that was. And in my education of transformational work, this is just what I've come to the understanding, that we actually get to be the alchemist. We actually get to transform and transmute those things into love. And so I've taken that rage that was happening, that not necessarily that they emoted much or actually said the things that they really wanted to share, but rather internalized it and made it be bad and wrong about, like, specifically my mom. Let's say she was in the victim role, let's just say, and nobody's ever in victim, but you know what I'm saying, right? There's a perpetrator, victim, blah, blah, blah. So let's say she's receiving this stuff and she puts the blame on him and whatever, and she's receiving that. It's like I get to be the evolution of that. And we get to do that. I'm not just saying this, I'm not speaking to just myself. I think we all are alchemists, and we all have an opportunity to take that, whatever that is, and turn around. So I use that rage into unleash. I use that passion and at unleash, and it transmutes it, because what I do with it is like bring all of that energy that is so passionate and turn it into play. And I turn it into joy, and it's loud and it's expansive. It is like my dragon self, right? Like it's like this fire. That fire is a tool for alchemy, right? Fire is what burns things, and it literally transforms them. You put a piece of paper in fire, it'll turn into ashes. And so like it dissolves it, transmutes it, creates something new with it. And so that fire and that rage doesn't have to be utilized in a violent manner. It can actually be used in a way that allows the energy to be created into something else and formed into something else. And so I'm grateful for that. And I feel like I'm getting to a place now that it's alchemizing so much that I'm softening. I'm softening as a person. I'm softening in my ways of going about things. I formulated a lot of compassion and empathy for people, and for myself, and giving myself permission to feel deeply and to go there all the time. And so I feel like, this work specifically of going to the depths of where did I even get that belief from that is ruling my life, right? That if you have a belief, for instance, I just worked with somebody recently, if you have a belief that, let's say when you're young and you're crying to your mom and dad and you're like, but mom, and you're like emoting this, and your parent tells you, I can't understand you when you're crying and trying to talk to me, right? I can't even understand you. So don't even come to me with tears and crying until you're done with that. Then I can listen to you. Let's say that was something that occurred. What happens is if that's said often enough, right? Then the child begins to suppress emotion and now intellectualizes everything so that they don't need to emote anymore or feel anymore, because that was bad and wrong to do, because then I won't be seen, I won't be heard, I won't be loved. if I show up this way, if I show my true emotions, which I think happens with men that you spoke to, when boys are told boys don't cry, for instance, the similar situation, they begin to intellectualize and logical mind their way through life instead of dropping into their heart more. And I do believe that men are coming around. I do feel that they are with this type of work that, I'm doing and other people are doing with transformation work. They're giving themselves the permission to feel more. Their feminine side of emotion, of that very beautiful, creative, non-linear way of being is coming online a lot more for them now. So I do have high hopes and faith that we're all coming and blending together in a more fluid way where women are softening and men are also softening, because we had to almost become hard asses in order to be seen and heard and respected in the world, right? So we overdeveloped and over masculinized ourselves in order to be equal to a man, and almost like turned off a lot of our emotions and began to predominantly charge and get it done and do that whole thing, which is totally fine. I think that that's been needed. And now we're coming into a state of balance. I think all of us truly are coming into a state of balance and alchemizing all this pain, all this suffering that doesn't need to be had anymore. And I'll share one more thing about my mom. I just came out to her yesterday, meaning I shared with her. Okay, wait, I have to backtrack, because after this EFT session, or actually during this EFT, I met this woman, and I didn't meet her there. Actually, she came to Unleash. She was there with a partner. And I didn't think anything of her in any kind of way. I just thought, oh, what a beautiful woman, just like I think of a lot of people. Yes, you're raising your hand. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to pause you right here as we're switching into another track.
Yes.
Mental track.
I know, I can fucking go on.
and as we move into this track, so what I have come to realize through your story is that going through this 10-day retreat, this emotional freedom technique retreat, that you have felt more spaciousness. It has cleared your mind and your brain. Yes. And within that, it has expanded you to a place of being able to
receive more
love.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so
yes,
more love. And I know this is something, both you and I are, well, now you get to be 40 with me. We've both 1981 babies. Mm-hmm. And are desiring, it's so interesting to say more, because not more, partnership. Yeah,
partnership and just love, because I am not just experiencing more love in partnership or romantic relationship. I'm literally, there's no discrimination. It's like more love is just more love. And I can share with you the different circumstances that have occurred to, show evidence of that, I suppose.
And as we started the conversation too, you had mentioned of feeling also overwhelmed by a lot of people. There's so many people, and I can resonate a lot with that. I think that the two of us have talked about this in the past of needing space to retreat and feeling overwhelmed, and specifically the Robin Dunbar number. I mention the Robert Dunbar number often because it says actually the human brain can only handle between 100 to 200 people. And now we're in this expansiveness, is what I'll say the quote unquote conscious community loves to talk about, and where I align with as well, is this idea of oneness. And in oneness, it's well, there's 7-8 billion people on planet Earth, and now we're able to connect to more people than we've ever connected to before in the past, through social media, through events, through being out in the world. so in the spaciousness, you're able to take on more and to receive more. And it sounds as though that has given you also more story of love.
More storage, too. Yeah. More storage capacity. That's right.
Okay.
With the things that I actually want in my life versus the programming, which is different.
And now, what I do know about you, you're, I hate to label, but bisexual. You like men and women. You don't discriminate against one gender or the other gender. And so coming out and sharing this with your mother yesterday was catalyzed or inspired by what? Okay,
so I do want to go back to the part of love really quickly before I dive into that. I think, so what happens is, like, if your storage is full, right, you can't really receive more information and you can't have access to giving more. So as I'm with a lot of people and there's a lot of giving, that I'm doing, but also an inability to receive and to actually feel myself within myself. So when you open up this now newfound storage, and you clear your wounds and traumas of, like, the belief systems around your parents, the belief systems around love, because we define love based on what we've also been receiving. And so a lot of the times when I went into relationship, I would be playing out the wounds. I would be playing out, like, let's say my story was my dad didn't make me important. Okay. And, in order to be important, I had to show accomplishment in my life. He would always like introduce me as, like, oh, this is my daughter and she has a 4.0 and look at all the awards. And, I felt like a trophy child. And in order to be seen by him, I was like, cool, I'll do all the things to get straight A's. I'll do all the things to receive this love, and be accomplished. And also in my life, if you really watch what's happening here, I've had to prove myself to my dad. Dad, look at me. Look at all that I've accomplished, and still not receiving the love because it's actually not the way he would have desired that I did it. So he had a certain authoritarian way of knowing what and how to do it that was approved by him. So when I colored outside the lines, it was not accepted by him. And he's, right now still, like, he's not even talking to me, and I can go into that whole thing, but it's like there's a lot of fear there for him, because it's like the unknown, and he doesn't want me to fail because those are his own fears being projected onto me. Like that if I go and draw outside the lines, there's a possibility of me failing. So anyway, what it boils down to is that I have been trying to prove myself. And let's say that I made it mean that when my dad didn't pick me up when I was a child, when he had a date, and he was supposed to spend the weekend with me, I made it mean, oh, I'm less important. So with the men, and maybe with the women too that I've been with, there's been that wound playing itself out of finding the evidence that they're making me less important, right? Because it keeps playing itself out that if I keep in my subconscious mind, I'm not important, the evidence will show in the reality of the world, because that's my thought being projected out into the universe. So then a person or people will reflect that back to me, specifically in romantic relationships that I'm trying to find my dad in, right? I'm trying to find, the love. And so it's going to keep playing out until I pattern interrupt it. So when I did all of this clearing around my childhood traumas, around that piece around importance, around all the thoughts that I believe that aren't really true, because it's not true that my dad made me less important. That's a story I fabricated for my survival, for my personal way of navigating through life. And that's not, I don't think he made me less important. I thought, I imagine that he thought that he thinks I'm very important. He thinks I'm so important that he is not talking to me right now because I'm so important. He doesn't want to feel the pain of what So he's avoiding feeling pain because I'm so important to him that he wouldn't want to see me fail. Does that make sense?
It's a perspective shift, and it makes a lot of sense.
It's a reframe, right? It's a reframe on this, and you know, through EFT, you know, you're able to really go there and really see it for something like just a total reframe than what you had and what you've been believing this whole time. So as I cleared that, here's this woman that shows up. She went to Unleash. She came because she saw Sonya Sophia at Unleash. So here we are at Unleash, and her ex-fiance is there, the person she brought to Unleash with, or like he brought her actually. He actually had told her that he thought that we would connect, and he was afraid of that, and he brought her anyway to Unleash. And again, when I'm at Unleash, I'm not in the frame of mind of, you know, hooking up with people necessarily or anything like that. You know, if it were to happen organically, it just does. But I'm typically in a certain role. And here she is. Now we're rooming together. And I had just thought about her because she's acupuncturist. She's a doctor. And so I was like, oh, I think I need some acupuncture. And I thought about her like 3 days before. And here she is rooming with me. And we go through this transformation together. We're all in it, including him. And we are clearing all these programs that finally on about I believe it was day 8 out of the 10 days, that we cleared and tapped through sexual trauma. Or anything, belief systems revolving sex that morning. And then we have this really beautiful experience of a dinner party. No alcohol, everything's like, it's substance free, you know, we're at a retreat, but the ways to be really present with your food, almost like a tantric experience of feeding people. It was just like this really amazing sensual experience that we had. And once I got to her and we were putting like chocolate on our bodies and licking it off, not making out or anything, so that there was no actual, you know, connect with the face, right? There's no smashing of the lips together. But that all of a sudden I see her, like, because all of the programs have been cleared and I've deeply accepted the part of me that's gay. And she has come into a space where she deeply accepts that, because that was wrong for me growing up. And you know, and when I share with you, I told my mother this yesterday at age 39, when I've been with women since age 24, means 15 years or 16 years, I haven't told her to avoid judgment or conflict or her experiencing pain. And it also kept us at a distance. So here I am, all of a sudden I'm sort of finding myself in this love bubble that I've never felt before. I've never fully been able to express everything so transparently that's on my mind to her and she with me in a way that was uninhibited. It's like all those things that we think about, no, I shouldn't tell this person. It's too soon to tell them. You know, we create these things that we don't want to tell the person, even if we like them. And we create these barriers. And with her, it just feels like it's like such a deep love that I'm able to now experience. And never have I experienced this with a woman before. And also because I cleared that program of it being gross, bad, and wrong of being with other women, because that's what my mom had instilled in me. Because I fully accepted it within myself, the reflection now I'm receiving from a woman is that she's all in too, because she's fully loving and accepting herself too. Most of the women that I've been with or dated have been women that have been exploring their sexuality, and I happened to be a bridge. Even though I wanted to really fall in love with them, I actually couldn't until I accepted the part of me that's gay, until I fully loved and embraced that. Because when I started to tap into it, the big reason that I was still receiving these reflections of women that were on the brink or, getting too close to feeling for me, and then they would push me away because they're like, oh no, I'm not a lesbian. No. This like completely shattering their reality of the possibility of even being in love with a woman. It was just like, no. And then they would just kind of leave. But that's still because that I was still believing that inside of me in a very subtle way. And it wasn't until I received that fully and cleared it that now I feel like I've never had this much spaciousness to receive somebody, and the way she speaks to me of like, I want to pour love into you. I've never received that, and especially in such a short period of time.
What this particular woman, we're planning to have her as a guest on Deepen with Christina podcast. And so I know who you're speaking of. And she doesn't, from an appearance perspective, I've been with you through the journey as you have explored with other women before. And they all had a very similar look. Now, this particular woman is gorgeous, but she doesn't follow that typical appearance that you've had with other women in the past, from my perspective.
And what do you mean by that? Share.
Usually they're blonde, light eyes, petite women.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So this one is different. It's the first one that I'm seeing is different.
Yeah, she's tall, very tall. Yeah, brown hair, brown eyes. Yes.
Yeah. So that's different. And, but I'm curious of, you speak about love. How do you distinguish love and relationship? Because I can fall in love with somebody, but it doesn't mean that I should be in relationship with them. So
sure.
Where are the two of you? Because love is like the icing on the cake. Love is sort of kind of easy, but the relationship, you have to, there's other characteristics to, if you're desiring to have life partnership and something sustainable and to grow old with somebody. Is that something that you're considering and exploring within this particular connection?
To grow old with her? Is that?
well, when you're thinking of love versus relationship, are they the same thing to you or are they different?
No, I mean, I think it's inclusive. I think that we are relating with people all the time. And I'm in relationship with you right now, and I have so much love for you. Like, I can receive you even more now, because of the spaciousness that I've created. So my ability to love you, because I can receive you deeper as I deepen with you through my own excavation of the stuff that was in the way of me receiving your full beingness. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how we're relating. I am able to just love more. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be in a romantic relationship with you, because that's just not the energetic or the that you and I have, right? I'm not attracted to you in that way. And with different people, you're going to experience different things. However, there is a possibility that because, let's say, you've opened yourself up so much more, kind of like it happened with her, I was able to receive her in a romantic way that I wasn't able to before. I literally saw her as a potential friend. I thought she was attractive. But I can't say that I was expecting this at all. Like, there was not like a part of me that was like, oh, let's see what I can do to, like, connect this in a romantic way. It wasn't that. It's just like, it so happens that she was a person that matched me in my vibrational frequency that I could now officially receive into my life in a romantic way that I've been asking for, but I couldn't have received that before. So I can receive you with greater ease. I can receive even, I have a new roommate that moved into a house, and I I haven't really gotten to know her. And there has been, just like me, when I first meet people, I'm just in an observation of them. And I couldn't quite receive her as much as when I came back from the retreat. I was able to just see her and love her in her person. Because I guess maybe the characteristics or the personality traits that she was exuding, I couldn't quite understand or grasp. Like, my brain couldn't quite understand it. But as I opened my heart, I could just receive her personality. I could just receive more of her without me putting so many barriers and walls up due to potentially experiencing more pain, due to whatever beliefs that I had around it. And so I feel like love is just more accessible, because it's like love is always present. It's our ability to open ourselves up to receive it, though, that's the difference, because love is ever expansive. And it's to the degree that we can receive ourselves that we can experience love and give that much more, because we're receiving that much more. And receiving has been one of the hardest things for me to ever do. And, it's interesting that as I received myself, and even shared this with my mother yesterday, as she was I was telling her, hey, this thing with the two men that I was dating, it didn't fly. It just didn't, we kept missing each other. It just didn't feel like a fuck yes to me. And I was just trying to describe that to her. And she's like, well, what other prospects do you have? I'm like, well, I paused for a second and I thought about it. I'm like, damn, I don't know how she's going to receive this. But I ended up leaning into it. I'm like, well, there's this girl. And, it just started being with her. And she did not know what to say. She was just in complete pause. And she's like, what do you mean, a girl? And I'm like, well, Mom, like a woman, and it's kind of like I energetically connect with people, and I don't see the sex. It's more of a connection that I have with that individual. And she's like, I just don't understand. And I'm like, Mom, I know it must be really challenging for you to understand. And this has been going on for me since I was 24. I just didn't want to tell you because I felt like you would, judge me and you wouldn't receive it. And so I didn't want to stir the pot. And I also didn't share it with her before because it wasn't anyone that I wanted to introduce to my mom, because it didn't feel quite like something more than sexual exploration. And I, it's kind of like, I'm not going to go talk to my mom about my threesomes and my sex life, so I felt the same way with this, and I didn't want to stir the pot if it didn't need to be stirred. And in retrospect, really that was taking up space of the energy that I'm holding back from sharing something, so meaningful in my life. And with this person gave me the opportunity to be like, this is an actual person that I would want to introduce to my mom, because it's somebody that I can actually see being in relationship with. And so she was like, I think nowadays, I think it must be the food. I think it's the food. It's like, I'm like, Mom, I swear it's not the food. I've been into girls since I was little. I just didn't explore it till I was 24. And I knew that you didn't have a good opinion about it. So I was afraid to tell you it because I was afraid of you judging me and not loving me. And kind of the conversation went on. And she's like, but I'm like, well, ask me whatever you want to ask me. And so she's like, but what about, imagine yourself having sex with them. And I'm like, well, Mom, I'm like, that's already happened. Because I said it's like a connection, an energetic connection. I think she was just trying to still wrap her head around like that distinction between sex and just being connected with somebody. And ultimately it was so refreshing for me to hear, well, I guess I'm not going to stop loving you for this. I just can't understand you. And I'm like, I get it.
Well, can't understand you. I imagine with time. That's what time is. Now that she gets to experience and know you more deeply, because you essentially have been holding this information back from her, as you said, since you were 24. So for her, her brain is now trying to compute all that has happened and what is possible and to understand it. I
think it'll help her release a lot of the shame that has gone on within her about whatever she was told that was right and wrong, and seeing me in relationship with another woman and seeing that it's just a person, that these concepts that we have about like, oh, that lesbian, or ooh, that dyke, like this sort of thing that's outside of us, versus like, Mom, she's like me. Like, she's a person. She's like me, right? Because my mom knows me, and she knows that I'm not like a bad person. I'm just a person. I'm just a person. So, for her, and ultimately she ended up kind of like, man, she's like, Yari, like, you never seem to not surprise me. You're always surprising me. I never know what to expect from you. And I'm like, well, you asked me to tell you and share with you more about my life. And so I'm choosing to tell you more about my life. And so here it is, Mom. Do you really want to know about my life? Because it doesn't look traditional. And she was able to receive that. Yeah.
I think most of our lives don't look traditional.
No.
There's so many fetishes out there and withholding of information that we can't really get close to another human being. So bravo for you to go deeper with your mother and give her that gift of being able to know you even more. I want to end with this thought that's going through my head and hear how you respond to it. And then potentially maybe we can do a part 2 of this podcast where you can give me a session. I would love to experience an EFT session with you and share that with listeners. But what's going through my mind is, I'm taking, I'm enrolled in the IPAC coach certification program. We just started this past weekend. We did 3 days intensive, 10 hours a day. And the program begins to share the difference of all different types of modalities, and specifically therapy and coaching. So the difference of therapy, as saying both are coaching and therapy are really important modalities, is that therapy will take you from your past into the present. And coaching takes you from the present into the future. Mm. So I hear, as you speak about love, that it is very much of a present feeling, a present experience. How is it that you also include your intentions or desire for your future within this current experience?
Okay, wait, I'm trying to understand the question. Go ahead. Can you
Yes.
say that?
Yes. So what I hear from you right now is that there's a very much of a present experience in love that's happening. You're overflowing. You're receiving this new person. You're very much in love. Mm-hmm. And my question is of how within that framework are you thinking of future planning? Of building a life with another human being, or are you very much of like, let's be right here, right now?
Yeah, it feels much more like let's be right here, right now, because my future is actually being formulated differently already, because I'm in the present moment being a very different person than I was in the past, since I'm now not operating from my past wounding of for instance, I just shared with her this morning, I told her about like how I shared about my mom to my mom. And I told her that, you know, I saw her as being in my life. And mind you, this is very recent. And I'm operating from a fearless state of expressing love without feeling like, oh no, like she might take this in a way and like then get away from me. Right? Like that's how I would operate with a little bit of fear in the past in my relationships. And so I wouldn't give myself permission to express love or share words that could potentially be scary to some people. And so because I even said, and there's a little part of me, and I'm tapping through it, there's a little part of me that's scared to tell you this, because in my old programming, that's, you know, a very big part of me. And so I want to speak even to that little voice that's saying, oh no, if you tell her, that might break up whatever you have going on right now. But I leaned into it, and what she responded back, and she's like, I'm so grateful that you're sharing this with me. And I want you in my life, right? So she's able to respond differently because I'm operating from a different state of being. So it's a state of being that actually creates a new future. It's not even something that I have to necessarily envision far out there. I'm just different. Therefore, my future is different.
Do you have a vision for your future?
I do have visions for my future. Yes. Like I have that. And, you know, what I see in my future is literally living in a world that is harmonious, full love, empathy, acceptance, and expression of individuality in all of the ways, in my personal life and in humanity. I see a more fluid state of being rather than very strict and stern and boxed in. I see a humanity that is now coloring outside of the line and crossing over into the next page, you know, of the coloring book. And we are becoming more one. You know, when I was speaking to my mother, she, you know, about the programs and beliefs about like my relationship should be with a man, I'm supposed to have babies, like, you know, all this stuff, this is all boxes, right? And so as we revolutionize ourselves, right, now that, you know, like everything has been a revolution to fight and stand for our truths. Like whether that was the witches that were burned at stake in the past, women voting, slavery and civil rights, the gay marriage that has been approved in the United States. We are evolving to stand in our individuality and stop with the madness of trying to control or conform people into these things to meet a level of comfort, and to make other people feel comfortable to what they're afraid of within themselves. And so I feel like I see a world of coming into oneness. Like men are even giving themselves the opportunity to be more dressing in a way that I'm seeing it now, like that is a little bit more effeminate, including these things, and men being affectionate with other men. And it doesn't mean that they're gay, but they're allowing themselves to be more affectionate, something that wasn't as seen before, at least not in the United States, okay? I think other cultures might have that, but not here. And yeah, there's still a lot of work to do in the world. You know, I was just in Dubai, and the laws are very different there. And people operate very differently. And it's not a level of freedom. Like being gay is not, no, like you could be arrested for that. You could be imprisoned for that. So there are places still in the world that are on the up and up, but there has to be, like the United States, I feel like we are a country that gets to show possibility, and we are breaking through these barriers that then can be modeled after, you know, in other parts of the world. That it's radical in the way that we are rebelling, in a lot of ways. And other countries do show show us other things about the ways that they live that are also important to us to remember who we really are. And I think more than anything, we are remembering who we are in our true essence. So that's the world that I see in my vision. And I see myself being with one man and one woman in my life because I feel like they're apples and oranges. Like I can't, yeah, it's like they're two different experiences. And so I don't have an expectation for a man to show up like a woman does. Like when I have sex with a woman, it is like prolonged for hours and hours and hours and hours. And part of that is because there's not a penetrative, or we can go into that. But what I'm saying is that it's just a very different experience. When I'm with a man, it just becomes more primal. So within that, it changes how we show up for each other, even sexually, right? So it's just different. I can't talk to a man while we're in the shower about, my like the stuff that women talk about. It's just very different, and I have no expectation for a man to be that for me. So I feel like I'll have both in my life. I feel like my mom and my parents will just love me anyway. I see a future where, everyone around me is feeling less judgmental about themselves through me, and less judgmental towards me and towards other people because I'm in their close vicinity and they see that I'm a person. It's not something out there. So, yeah. Hope that answered your question.
That answered, and I think you came when I listened to you, I was first interpreting as, these are very worldly. Her vision is very worldly. And
I'm an Aquarius rising.
Yeah. And then I started to wonder, my brain is going, I'm wondering if there is a sacrifice that is being made, a personal sacrifice for the worldly.
I love this question so much. Thank you for wondering that.
And then as you came around in the end of you actually brought it back to you of like, I envision one man, one woman always being in your life. I didn't hear in the vision that it was a consistent one man, one woman, like the same person always. I didn't hear this time children, which I have heard before in the past, but that still may be present for you.
Yeah, that's still present for me. Mm-hmm.
And so it was, but the self-sacrifice. I do think it's important that you have to sacrifice for a shared life. So there is sacrifice is important. But
it's a self-sacrifice to not go for what you want. That's self-sacrifice. Is compromising yourself. That's self-sacrifice. It's like compromising and not being in your truth. You're sacrificing yourself for the sake of the comfortability of others. That's fucking self-sacrifice. So what I'm actually doing and what I'm teaching and what I'm being is the opposite of self-sacrifice, is like being and standing in your truth despite the rest of the world or the rest of the people. I feel like you are self-sacrificing if you do that. Like, yeah. So that's actually, we are actually self-sacrificing so much more in the world that I've seen in the current reality and in past. And again, we're moving into a different future, but this sovereignty is what we're stepping into. And it might feel like I'm sacrificing myself for the world, but really I'm in integrity with myself for the world. Oh, I hear you brought it back at the end to your own personal vision. So there is both. And I see that you definitely dance in both. And also too, what is true for you is the worldly stuff is actually personal as well. Yeah. And that's just my makeup. That's just like who I am as an individual. I don't expect other people to be in the way that I am at all. Like I've always, since I was little, it was always such a worldly thing. I always have wanted for the world to be free. And And so the world and myself, I actually don't even have a separation between the two.
Thank you. I was at the gym this morning working with the trainer. I said, I'm going to go record a podcast with one of the most fascinating people in the world. And she also happens to be one of my best friends. So thank you. I always learn from every single conversation with you. You are a wizard of existence. And how you live your life is just so profound. And I'm so blessed that I get to share you with the world. Do you have time to do a tapping session? Do we want to record that?
Well, I think we could do a different time because, there's a 5-minute tap or something like that to sort of allow you to like if there's a trigger to decrease your nervous system from that trigger, but to actually go into a session that I feel people would really get a lot out of, I think we should definitely reserve that for a different interview and time, specifically because we had said we're going to do an hour, and here we are, 1 minute and 20.
we're going to end this one, and that will be a part 2. So we can do a part 2 of this episode and release them at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And I guess I'll end also with, the reason for releasing these files, as we talked about earlier about EFT, is having access to these files that are in your computer program in your brain to extract them, look at them, and be like, oh yeah, I don't need you anymore. This is old stuff. I need to clear room for new things that I actually want to live by, is when we talk about that love that we want to receive, you also get to really feel yourself in the pleasure, not the pain. We're so focused a lot of times around the pain that we keep even relating to people through pain versus the pleasure that we can feel. And I'm excited for humanity to relate around the pleasure of life and the pleasure and the sensationalism and the miracle of your own body and the relationships that we get to have and the pleasure and the joy in the play that we get to do in this world. So I'd like to help humanity alchemize from pain to pleasure.
Yes. Yes, more play. Take us back to being children. We are, I still at this point feel as though just a grown-up child. So play is so important. Thank you, Yarixa. What Unleash is that happening in March?
March 10th through the 13th. And this one is themed Radical Play. So it's Unleash Radical Play, which we get to literally have so much existence and presence in the innocence of who we really are, in that childlike innocence of playing games and remembering our spirit, our heart, which obviously allows us to work better, to have more ideas, creativity, fall in love. And Sonya Sophia will also be there. And, there's going to be lots of different modalities to take us back home, to take us back to that place in our heart that's like, oh, thank God. There you are. I can just surrender into this space of pure love and pleasure. So I invite whoever is listening and feeling the call to play more, specifically after, these, 2020 and 2021, that have been radically, painful and chaotic and also beautiful, but to allow the antidote to any of the pain and suffering, depression, anxiety to be play. So March 10th through 13th, it will be in Miami.
Oh, we have a date.
Yeah, March 10th through 13th, Miami, at a place called Home on top of it all. And it's this beautiful castle with a lagoon with waterfalls. I mean, it is ridiculous. So there is a limited count too. It's only 200 people total, and the tickets do go fast, and we will be starting the sales of them in December. So just to, give you that, and follow at Unleash Movement to, hear all the details about it.
Those tickets are definitely going to go quickly because last time you hit 200 so fast.
Yeah, sold out.
Yes.
Every time it's sold out.
Take your holiday money. Use your holiday money and get this for yourself for Christmas. I will definitely be there. I'm not missing out on this event. 3 days, change your life. You'll meet the most amazing people. Thank you, Yarixa, for joining me again for another episode of Deepen with Christina. Again, if you enjoyed this episode, Yarixa is on episode 3 and 8, so go back and listen. They're each deep, they're each important, and they're each unique. If you haven't checked it out yet from when I started talking before we recorded, wedeepen.com, go to the website, check out the calendar, and find experiences that resonate with you and try them out. Step outside of your comfort zone and connect. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe or leave a comment. You can also send me a message. I'm on Instagram at Christina Weber. You can also find We Deepen on Instagram. Follow, send me a message. I would love to hear from you. And thank you all for tuning in again. Until next time, bye for now.